Good evening and welcome to the Daily News Roundup. I am Abigail Smythe. Among the stories in this evening's newscast, Prime Minister Andrew Holness to hold talks with U.S. top crime-fighting outfit FBI in a bid to tackle Jamaica's crime problem. Jamaica's murder rate passes 1,400. 2 men fatally shot during joint police-military operation in Manchester. Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs says persons' right to bail under the new legislation will not be taken away. More than 22,000 electors added to new voters list. In business, Jamaica continues to see decline in remittances. In the region, a ruling Dominica Labour Party returns to power after Tuesday's general election. On the international scene, Argentine vice president convicted and sentenced to 6 years in prison. And in sports, Morocco reached World Cup quarterfinals for the first time in history. Now for the news in detail. Prime Minister Andrew Holness is in the United States to hold bilateral talks with U.S. law enforcement agencies as his administration intensifies its efforts to combat the threat posed by persons importing weapons into the country. The Prime Minister says these efforts form part of the government's response to the high level of crime in the country. Among the agencies the Prime Minister will seek to hold talks with is U.S. top crime-fighting and investigative outfit, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, FBI. Prime Minister Holness says foreign individuals who are directing criminal activities in the country can no longer operate with impunity. Mr. Holness says his government has been steadily enacting a comprehensive plan to address the country's national security challenges. He says Jamaica's challenges are as a result of an unsophisticated approach to national security over the last 30 years. Jamaica's murder rate is now up to 1,417. That's the latest statistic as of December 4. This is compared to 1,368 homicides recorded over the similar period last year, representing a 3.6% increase. The St. James Police Division has recorded the highest number of murders with 191, followed by Westmoreland with 136, St. Catherine North at 135, and St. Andrew South with 125. 11 of the 19 police divisions have seen an increase in murders. The police have recorded nearly 1,100 reported cases of shootings. Some 1,014 people have been injured in violence so far this year. Police statistics also show a 19% increase in robberies and 8% increase in break-ins. Human rights group Jamaicans for Justice, JFJ, has expressed disappointment with the government's decision to declare another round of states of public emergency. The emergency measure covers St. Anne, Clarendon, St. Catherine, sections of Kingston and St. Andrew, and the western parishes of St. James, Hanover, and Westmoreland. JFJ Executive Director Michael Jackson says the group maintains its position that the imposition of SOEs is not effective in tackling the country's rising crime rate. She adds that while the SOE might reduce the instances of crime in the parish in which it is imposed, it causes migration of criminals to adjoining areas where the security measure is not in effect. She calls the measure a hopscotch approach and questions its efficacy. She insists that there is nothing to suggest that it is working. Ms. Jackson has also sought to challenge statements made by Prime Minister Andrew Holness regarding the constitutionality of states of public emergency. In the meantime, one businessman in St. Anne says he is perturbed by the declaration of the state of emergency in the parish. Alric Denton, who operates a shop in Brownstown, says crime in St. Anne is not at the level that warrants the emergency measure. He says after 2 years of lockdowns due to the COVID-19 pandemic, businesses are trying to recuperate in the Christmas season. He says now the SOE will make them worse. There has been a 68% increase in the number of tips received by Crime Stop Jamaica compared to the corresponding period last year. Manager for Crime Stop, Sharice Bruce Douglas, says to date, Crime Stop has received approximately 1,081 tips on illegal firearms and wanted persons. Bruce Douglas says the figure has completely surpassed the last year's. The Crime Stop manager says nearly 100 tips have been given on persons wanted by the police. She notes that seizure of illegal guns has also seen an increase. Bruce Douglas says the increase is a result of several campaigns launched by the JCF and the government. These include the Get Every Illegal Gun campaign and the JCF's Wanted Wednesdays campaign. She says a partnership with the major organized crime and anti-corruption agency MOCA will soon be launched. 2 men were fatally shot during a joint police-military operation in Belfield, Manchester, Tuesday morning. Preliminary reports are that about 6 a.m. the police, acting on information, sought the assistance of the military and went to a house in the community. A senior police source says they received information that 3 alleged gunmen were in the house. On arrival of the police, 1 man ran with a firearm. Another man pulled a firearm at the police and they took evasive action. 2 of the men were shot and taken to hospital where they were pronounced dead. The 3rd man escaped. A firearm was also seized. In the meantime, the Independent Commission of Investigations Indicom is probing the incident. Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs Marlene Malahoo Fort says a person's right to bail under the new legislation will not be taken away. On Tuesday, the minister outlined the provisions of the new Bail Act at a joint select committee meeting. Last week, Executive Director of Jamaicans for Justice, Michael Jackson, attacked the new Bail Act, calling for Section 5, which covers the pre-charge component, to be struck out. She fears this endangers a person's right to bail as provided by the Constitution. She was joined by members of the Norman Manley Law School, who also felt the provision, as it stands, could run afoul of the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms. The Legal Affairs Minister sought to put those concerns to rest. She notes that under the law, a person held on pre-charge can only be kept for 48 hours before being brought before a judge. According to the minister, the law will not allow a detainee to be held indefinitely. Minister Malahoo Fort says the provision is targeted and seeks to balance the rights of the individual with the potential security concerns. She says the framers of the legislation went to great lengths to avoid breaching a person's constitutional rights. There is uncertainty today over the status of a court order that was reportedly disobeyed by the mother of 9-year-old Gabriel King, Amoy Issa. Mrs. Issa was ordered to give the police the password to her phone on 2 separate occasions as part of their investigation into the murder of her son. However, she has refused to do so. Her attorney has cited privacy concerns for her not doing so, and there has been little to no word from the police. Mrs. Issa's attorney, Chuck Cameron, says he's maintaining his silence. Further checks have revealed that the matter is now with the police. The JCF is to determine whether there's been a stay of the proceedings. In September, the St. James Parish Court granted the police a production order to compel Mrs. Issa to give the police the password to access her phone. But Mrs. Issa secured an injunction barring the police from accessing her phone that has been entered into evidence since January. In November, that injunction was dismissed and another order made for her to hand over the password to the phone. It's been 18 days since that ruling came from Parish Judge Sasha Ashley. The extraction of data from the phone was slated to be done on or before November 24. Attorney Nico Pagan says it is not an unusual case for someone to disobey a court order. However, he says there are legal ways to get Mrs. Issa to comply. Gabriel King was found with his throat slashed in the back seat of his mother's car on the Fairfield Main Road on January 13 this year. His mother reported to the police that her car was hijacked by gunmen who had made off with the vehicle. Opposition Member of Parliament Philip Paulwell was fined $45,000 or 6 months imprisonment for the loss of his licensed firearm in July. Paulwell appeared before the St. Andrew Parish Court Wednesday morning. He was charged with criminal negligence following a ruling from Director of Public Prosecutions Paula Llewellyn. Paulwell told the police that his licensed firearm was stolen from his vehicle in St. Andrew. It reported that sometime in July, while Mr. Paulwell was at a property in St. Andrew, men traveling in a Toyota Probox motor vehicle reportedly smashed the back glass to his vehicle and removed a pouch with the firearm. 4 men were held with a large quantity of what police suspect to be stolen tins of paint in the Kingston Central Police Division Tuesday afternoon. The men were apprehended while offloading the contraband items from a truck into a Toyota Probox and a Toyota Hiace minivan in the National Heroes Circle area. According to the superintendent in charge of the Kingston Central Police Division, Beresford Williams, the men are believed to be the main perpetrators in an active larceny investigation in another police division. Paint is a popular hardware item during the festive season as householders spruce up their homes during the Yuletide season.
On arrival, 4 suspects were apprehended after a large quantity of paints were recovered from 3 vehicles, a truck, a Probox, and an IS minibus. The paints recovered are believed to be the subject of a larceny investigation in the St. Andrew Central area. Members of the Halfway Tree CIB are leading investigation in that matter.
And more than 22,000 electors have been added to the new voters list. The Electoral Office of Jamaica EOJ has announced that 22,117 persons have been added to the updated voters list. It says the list, as at November 30, 2022, has a total of 2,001,759 electors. The EOJ says the new list will be used in the upcoming local government election due in February 2023. It says electors added to the November list will receive the new voter identification card with a December 31, 2032 expiry date. The EOJ says identification cards for these electors will become available by the end of December. And in business news, Jamaica continues to see a decline in remittances. The Bank of Jamaica BOJ has reported a dip in remittance inflows for the month of October. During that month, the country recorded inflows of $263.3 million, which was 5% less than October last year. The BOJ says the decline in inflows largely reflected a 3% drop in funds coming in via remittance companies. There was also a fall-off in funds coming through other remittance channels. More people brought cash in hand from overseas versus last year. The month's performance brings total remittances for the January to October period to $1.9 billion. That's a 1.6% lower than the corresponding 10-month period in 2021. And in the region, the ruling Dominica Labour Party has been returned to power in Tuesday's general election. This, even as 2 independent candidates won constituencies in the 21-seat parliament following a boycott by the main opposition political parties. Preliminary results released by the Electoral Office showed that the Labour Party, which had entered the election already having won 6 seats uncontested, had won 19 of the 21 seats. Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit, who has been in office since 2004 and was among those 6 Labour Party candidates elected to Parliament before a ballot was cast, says he welcomes the outcome of the polls. And on the international scene, Argentine Vice President Cristina Fernandez was convicted and sentenced Tuesday to 6 years in prison and a lifetime ban from holding public office for a fraud scheme that embezzled $1 billion through public works projects during her presidency. She was accused of improperly granting public works contracts to a construction magnate closely tied to her family. A 3-judge panel found the leader guilty of fraud but rejected a charge of running a criminal organization for which the sentence could have been 12 years in prison. It was the first time an Argentine vice president has been convicted of a crime while in office. Fernandez lashed out at the verdict, describing herself as the victim of a judicial mafia. The sentence isn't firm until appeals are decided, a process that could take years. She will remain immune from arrest in the meantime. Fernandez's supporters vowed to paralyze the country with a nationwide strike. They clogged downtown Buenos Aires and marched on the federal court building, beating drums and shouting as they pressed against police barriers. Fernandez roundly denied all the accusations. And in sports news, Portugal had no regrets over dropping Cristiano Ronaldo as his replacement, Goncalo Ramos, scored a hat-trick in a superb 6-1 win over Switzerland in the World Cup last 16 on Tuesday. Meanwhile, Morocco are in the World Cup quarterfinals for the first time in history after beating Spain 3-0 on penalties in a dramatic shootout following a 120-minute stalemate. World champions Shelly Fraser-Price and Sharika Jackson top the list of 8 nominees for the R.J.R. Gleaner National Sportswoman of the Year award. Commonwealth Games champion Rashid Broadbell is among one of 3 men nominated for the Sportsman of the Year crown. The awards ceremony is set for Friday, January 20, 2023 and is likely to be streamed to 20 Caribbean islands as well as the tri-state area in the United States. In the meantime, the 5-time world 100-meter champion Shelly Fraser-Price says she is not disappointed despite not winning the World Athletics Female Athlete of the Year award. American 400-meter hurdles world champion and world record holder Sydney McLaughlin-Levrun won the award. Also, Jamaican world under-20 champions triple jumper Jaden Hibbert and Kerika Hill missed out on the Rising Star Awards. And that's it for your news roundup for today. I am Abigail Smythe. See you next time.